So with that very brief little roundup of 3 of the potential spreadsheet software providers, has everybody got the breakdown of budgets Excel that Tony sent via email yesterday? Yeah, okay, great. Well, so the reason we're going to look at that, if I can find it on my screen, is because embedded in there already are some formulas. And those are the kind of the most common ones and the most useful ones when you're thinking about budgeting and keeping everything in order and making it all work. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share that document, and we can just look through. So essentially it's been created specifically for this event for you to have a play around. And I think the best thing to do is I talk you through the 3 or 4 different things that are on there, and then you can have a chance to just have a look at it yourselves and see if you can make it work. How does that sound? Everyone give me wrong thing, a thumbs up. Yeah. Everyone feeling that? Ooh, hold on. Someone else has just arrived. Let's just wait before we do that. It's Celia.
Celia Linnet is late.
Morning, Celia. Hi, how are you? You're good. You're muted, just so you know. But we just, hi, morning. How are you? Good. Great. We're just about to, I'm just about to share my screen to look at the breakdowns and budgets spreadsheet that was sent out with the link. In order for us to just talk through some really basic spreadsheet info. Now, can everyone see that? Everyone see my screen? Great. So here we are, first tab. Well, they call them sheets in Excel. I've just taken to calling them tabs. Did they used to be called tabs? I kind of think they might have used to be called tabs. Anyway. This first tab is the breakdown of the day. Next tab we've got is called Add Ranges. If you have a look through, you'll see that we've got 3 columns which have been called Range A, Range B, and Total, and then just some completely random numbers have been put in those ranges. In the columns, and then in the Total column, you got here. You'll see up in the function bar up here. The very basic formula, and this is how we do a formula, by putting an equal sign and then writing sum, and then in the brackets you put the formula that you want to create. This one is timesing this column by this column on this row, so column A by column B on row 3, and that is repeated all the way down until we get to the bottom here, which is the total of the total, and that has added the entirety of this column by putting a little colon sign in there. Is everyone seeing that? Is that clear? Yeah, pretty basic stuff. Hopefully that is the kind of thing you're all very, very across already. So next tab, this is a little bit more complicated. This is where it gets fun for me to try and explain. So this is where using the $sign so that you can keep an absolute reference, which means, someone else, oh, Rachel's coming back in, okay. To keep an absolute reference. So what we're doing here is we're making sure that every single one of the total columns, or every single one of the cost column is always, so yeah, sorry, let me start again. I'm going to read the header here. Just use the lead cost of £12.50 to make the cost column work. And the way we're doing that is by using this cost here, £12.50 in this cell C3, to times every single one of the days by the cost. Now Tony's left the formula for us to play around with and make it work. Every single one of these values in this cost column needs to be times by 1250, and we've already got 1250 in our spreadsheet. So what we do is we put in here, if I put a $sign there, essentially what you're doing is you're highlighting cell C3 and using that to times by every single one in the column. And by doing, the way you do that is you anchor it with the dollar sign. So if I put a dollar sign in front of C and a dollar sign in front of 3, that anchors it, and I can then copy this formula over here all the way down, and it will anchor it to the C3. So if you look, as I scroll down the column, each of these is being times by C3. I'm using my finger, that's not helping, so I need to use that. You can't see me pointing at my screen. Does that make sense? Can someone give me a thumbs up? Great. Do you want to have a play around? I'll give you a couple of minutes to have a look at that.
Do you want me to run through it a bit more as well? Because I think I can explain it a little bit in detail, if that's all right, Amy.
Absolutely.
Can I share your? You just come off that screen, and I'll.
Absolutely, yeah, I'll do that.
I'll share that. Okay. So can everybody see this one? For some reason I can't see any of you lot, but I'm sure that's okay. There we go. Everybody can see it. So
yeah.
The calculation is pretty straightforward in the first page. It's just this column versus this column. The way to do that is go up here to the sum sign and then just put it in. There's the first value times the second value. That's not actually done what it's supposed to do. And that gives you the figure. Now, the easy way to continue with that is to just take that formula and drag it down. And each formula now, as you can see it changing up here, is following down the columns with the times and adds. So it's pretty straightforward. And then at the bottom, you just add that set of columns together. The dollar sign. So this, so if you're using a static cost, so up here is the lead cost, and we want to use that cost all the time, what you get here is, so our first one would be this cell, oh, let's start again, sorry. This is our static cost times that cell. But if you then drag these down, they all go really wrong, because what it's doing is it's taking the calculation down with each calculation. So this is moving all the time. So we want to keep that cell static. That's cell C3. So we look at the dollar sign for C3. We put the $2 signs either side of C3. And that now will keep C3 in every equation all nice and static. So that just helps you put figures up at the top of your budgets, and then you can quite easily keep them static and just drag and drop things. It just helps you really quickly with the situation. Here's a little issue. If you look at this page, you could find problems, and this is just a quick tip to get out of things. So looking at the print for this page is 85 sheets long. If you were due to print this out, this would be really quite embarrassing. So there's a piece of information somewhere on here that you need to try and find, because it's right down on page 85 or right across on page 85. So the easiest way to do this is do fin option. So finish option on a Mac will get you to the end, the very, very end cell that's used. So fin option there, fin control. Sorry, it's finish control gets you to the very end option. You can see that there. Cancel that out. Fin control left arrow gets you back to the start. Fin control right arrow gets you back. So you can maneuver around with the finish control left and right arrows and find out where you're going. And this should eliminate the end sections very quickly. So now we're down to 1 page. We've eliminated that 85 pages quite quickly. Okay, everybody get that?
Yeah.
So fin control, there's the last section, empty that, go back. Let's see how big the pages are. We're on 76 pages now. So we go fin control back to the end, cancel those, and we go back, and eventually we'll get all our data rid. Is that easy? Maybe.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Righto. Page to page stuff. Pretty simple. Or you can do, if you want to take a range or an area, is to just decide where you want to put it. Take the auto sum, go to the opposite page that you want it on, drag the areas that you want to go onto the new page and press enter. And that's giving you the sum of it, you idiot. If you do plus, go to the other page, it should work like that. Everybody see that? Straightforward. So you can just copy data, and if you change the data on here, it will automatically respond to here. There you go, it's changed to 33. So that you know that if your data changes on one page, it goes over to the other page. And then this section is just copying, adding pages, which we'll work on quite later on. Just go down to the tab, click on the tab, move and copy. I want to copy that page. I want to create a copy. And it just adds a copy. Okay. Pretty much simple. What I'd say is get yourself a jolly book. This is my book with my name on it. So that will help you. I mean, they're a tenner. So what all that will do is it will just help you with your formulas and your basic stuff. You can obviously Google things, and that normally helps really quite easy. But yeah, knowing your formulas and all that sort of thing is very, very important. Right, we should move on, Hannah.
Cool. So we have got a line producer and an accountant come to talk to us this morning. Tony, did you want to stop sharing it?
Trying to do that now.
And
could it go wrong?
Ready and waiting. I hope you come primed with some questions. We've got some to start the ball rolling, but if there's anything you want to ask, this is very much in the spirit of fact finding and sharing information. So please feel free to ask anything. If you want to whack it in the chat, I will vocalize it. And here we go. I'm going to let them in and we can say hello. Hi, good morning. Hi, Kasia, Nikki, hi. Need to find you on my screen. Good morning, how are you doing? You both arrived muted, just to let you know, just so you don't with that. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks so much for joining us today.
No worries.
Great.
Hi, Tony.
Morning, Kasia. Morning, Nikki.
Hi, morning.
You all right? Oh, that's is it your birthday?
I always got balloons in the background.
Amazing.
Love it.
It was Adam's birthday last week.
All right. So he loves the pink balloons, right?
Yes.
I know him well. So yes, I'd probably say he does. Lovely. Morning. So just so everybody knows, Nikki and Kasia, Nikki's an accountant and is working with Kasia currently on a film. Kasia is a producer, line producer, and they've been on all sorts of sizes of things. Am I allowed to say what you're currently doing, Kasia?
Maybe not.
Okay, I won't. They're doing a very important film for very important people. Anyway, what we wanted to do this morning is just get them in for half an hour, just to talk through where they find the problems are with departmental budgets, what are good, what are bad, what are you trying to communicate to them, and what's the information that they need the most. Because what I find really is a lot of heads of departments all busy away in their own little style and think that they've got it all laid down there, but it'll just be hieroglyphics to an accountant because it's probably communicated in such a bad way. So is it okay if we go over those questions that we put in, ladies, and you can answer one after the other or together, or maybe you've picked your answer and done homework?
Yeah, right.
Ah.
We'll just improvise.
Okay, so first question I had, which is, what are your 10 favorite films? No, what? So the 5 most common errors that you see in departmental budgets. Kasia, you've got quite an opinion on this, and I've got some prepared.
I mean, I've seen a few of those. So maybe Nikki, I'll start on this one because I deal with those probably more than you do. I normally spare Nikki the pain of going through those in detail. I mean, Tony, you kind of answered your own questions there, but I think, I mean, it all comes down to having a really good template, I find, and a lot of locations managers don't have it. And then it comes down to having a good knowledge of Excel. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not kind of having to go on some advanced courses. It's about having, you know, the knowledge of putting in the right formulas and using, you know, color-coded systems and things like that, and making sure everything adds up. And the most common errors I've seen are really basic, like, for example, columns not adding up, or cell being missed, or the whole section being missed. And then you look at it, and a lot of time when I open the budget, when it comes in, I have a very quick glance at the bottom line before I get into the detail. And I look at the bottom line, let's say it looks okay, and then a week later, when I find the spare time, I start going through it and I realize that the whole section of the spreadsheet hasn't been added. And then suddenly there is a shortage of about 50 grand or something like that, or, you know, it's an example. So, and it feels really frustrating to then go back to someone who's getting paid quite a lot of money for being a head of department, who submitted this, and the excuse is that they're really busy and they don't have time, or they don't know how to use Excel, or they inherited a template from someone else and just didn't do the due diligence of checking that everything is adding up before submitting it to me, or, you know, anyone above them. And like I say, it's very simple. It's about dedicating a few hours to make sure it all adds up. And yeah, I've showed Tony some bad examples of the budgets I've had, and yeah.
Shall we just run through for a bit of fun time what these bad examples are? Now,
yeah, sure.
We're not going to take the piss out of anybody, so I've redacted some of the information, but I am going to let you see this. Right, hold on. Security budget first. That's Kasia's little comment. Can everybody see that with the big black boxes on?
Mm.
I mean, make that a bit bigger. Can it? Oh, that's even worse, isn't it? Hold on. Okay, there you go. Kasia thinks that's amusing now, but it wasn't, obviously. Please find attached security budget for this week, plus the unit base to the 19th of May. The formula has stopped working on Excel. Any changes will have to be done manually. And here is the budget.
I mean, just to say that's a pretty extreme example as well.
Okay, can anybody see that? I've taken the addresses out so nobody sees what those are, but you can see that there is a date and a time and a finish date and a finish time. So obviously there's a formula in there that will count hours, but, and there's the quantity of guards, and this is where they are. So if you look up here, you can just see that all of these boxes are not formulas. They're just figures that have been typed in. May as well have used a Word document. And there's the hourly cost, there's the same. And even the formula here with the actual totals in are also just a Word document. And if we just do a quick whoop, put that back there. Oh, Hood, what are you doing? Let's have a look. Can't really grab it when it's doing what it's doing. That's interesting. It won't let me do it in a shared screen. I'll tell you what I'll do. No, it won't let me do it in a shared screen. It's very slow. So this down here is a formula, which is very good. And actually, if you do, oh God almighty. Oh, this is jumping everywhere. Look at this. It's gone mental.
Gremlins attacking.
It's gone very slow because I'm recording at the same time. So if we take that formula and drag that down there, and then make that as a sum of that lot, you can see there's an error here. So he's put all his figures in manually, and he's actually over budgeted slightly. There's the difference, but that can obviously be a massive under budget as well. So there's one example of a pretty bad. Let's not save that ever. And then the other example, which is very funny, is this one. Please find attached locations, budget 1. Apologies, I do not, still not able to use the budget template you sent me, and I need to go on an Excel course. This is ahead of a department. I've added the budget, blah, blah, blah. Thank you very much. Then the budget looks something like this. There you go. And again, the only thing that's a formula is this end box. It doesn't really explain anything clearly as to what's going on, how one location costs, how many prep days are you doing, what there's a cost for £40,000 there. How does that work? The cost above it for one day is £4,200. Why are there difference? So there's the sort of ideas on a bad budget. Okay. Right, Kasia, sorry.
Yes, so so just so you know, this was on a project with a really decent budget, so it wasn't exactly, you know, entry level or someone who has just stepped up. These are people who've been doing this job for a long time, as far as I understand. And just so you know, before we received that Excel spreadsheet with security breakdown, the first budget was submitted on a piece of paper in pencil. So yeah, it's a really extreme example, but you know, from my point of view, when I get a budget that doesn't include much information, you know, I don't really know where to start with it, because my first thing to do would be to kind of manipulate it myself a little bit to see where can we save money if it's over, you know, what's the daily rate of your location fee, your strike day. From that budget, I couldn't tell at all what were the rates that were assumed. There was just no breakdown, there was nothing. And it was just really hard to get any information out of that location manager. And, you know, luckily she actually wasn't over budget, which was a miracle. But again, it's like, to have the confidence to just let someone run with it that document doesn't give any of that. So it was really stressful time to not have someone on top of those things. And then, you know, comments like I would have to go on an Excel course, and I've sent her a fabulous template, which is Tony's template, which he and I kind of worked through on a couple of jobs together, which had, you know, actually Tony did the job of clearing it out and setting the formulas. And because I said to him, I've got this location manager who can't get her head around doing a proper budget. And he said, well, let me just send you my template completely cleared, so she can just enter the numbers and it will calculate things for her. And that was her answer, that in order to even use it, she'd have to go on the Excel course. So I kind of say at the back of that, if any of you feel like you don't have the knowledge of Excel, that is probably worth going on an Excel course, because it's really the basic knowledge you have to have. And on the other hand, you know, like I say, it's not some kind of proficiency Excel. It's pretty simple formulas, and sometimes, you know, I don't know all Excel formulas. It's quite easy to Google it and check how to enter one if you don't know how to come up with it. So yeah, from my point of view, that's the most important things. And you know, other areas I've seen in the past where just information overhanging from previous jobs, whether they are just narrative, descriptive things that just kind of left in templates, or even something as simple as the title in the header that someone forgot to change from the previous job. It shows a little bit of sloppiness, and I don't appreciate that. So I like people to make sure, you know, before you submit it, before you send it, make sure it's right, because it's embarrassing if things are wrong. That's all.
Can I ask Nikki a question? Nikki, what about contingency and overspending and communicating that? Should there be contingency in a departmental budget? What happens if we start overspending?
So generally, you wouldn't really ever split out a contingency in a departmental budget. That would be quite unusual to see, but you would be expected to pad out certain areas, I guess. In terms of how much that will be, I mean, it always kind of stands out if people kind of massively overestimating certain costs. But you can go on, you know, historical budgets or do a bit of research and just kind of maybe round those figures up a little bit, so you have your own cushion there. And then I guess kind of communicate that with me. Like, I would never hold anyone to having something set aside, but what I would do is I would make a note of that and just kind of keep checking in on, you know, the location manager and saying, how are we doing in this area? And I guess the aim of the game is to always have a little bit that you can pull out of thin air to move somewhere else, I suppose. But you wouldn't generally set a contingency line on a budget, which is, I know, it's a bit of a strange thing to say, but we quite rarely see them.
Okay, what happens if it starts to go wrong? Do we fess up early?
Yeah, definitely. You definitely need to, even if it's just a hunch, you should definitely say something early on. And again, I guess that links in with communication. Like, I work quite closely with the location manager, probably more so than any other department. So that sort of weekly communication in terms of them submitting a budget, it needs to be on top of any potential changes, because, you know, I don't want to hear of a change coming in when it's a purchase order that I have to approve. I need to know about it before then. So even if, like I say, if it is just a hunch, you need to come clean about it straight away. And it might well be that, you know, it's something that we're all aware of, and it's a bit of a production issue or editorial, but still to be kind of upfront about that at the start is definitely helpful.
Okay, and here's one for Kasia, because I know it's her favourite. When should I write my purchase order?
Well, I mean, that's not really a question, really. The purchase order needs to be done before the order goes in. So there's just don't even ask that question. Just needs to be done as soon as possible. And you know, that the industry has changed so much in recent years. I mean, I remember the days when you kind of, you know, have to dedicate a couple of hours at the end of the day to sit down with a purchase order pad and just dish them all out, and no one ever has time to do it, and it ends up being at the bottom of the priority list. And the same with the approval process, when purchase orders used to pile up on the line producer's desk for a couple of days before they had time to sit down, approve, and pass it on to accounts. Like, these days are gone. Everything is on your phone. Everything is digital. It's so easy to do this on the spot, on the day, very quickly, get the approval, get in the system, make sure I know about it, make sure Nikki knows about it. We can quickly run the cost report, compare it with what's in the budget, you know, tag it in the correct line. And it helps everyone to make sure that that everything is up to speed and there is no delays. And that's the biggest risk. Delay is the biggest risk to the budget, because if the information is not communicated straight away, like Nikki said, there's nothing we can do, and there is nothing, you know, we can't find compromises, we can't come up with solutions. So I'd say, as soon as you've got a quote and you think this is the way to go, as soon as you've got a pro forma invoice or anything, the purchase order goes in, and don't delay on it. And you can really do it on your phone in between going from one location to the other, or in the 5 minutes when you wait for a meeting. And if you can't do that, then, you know, at least dedicate the time daily to do all your purchase orders on time.
So I think the trick with a purchase order is not wait until you've got the exact figure correct. Just get that purchase order in early, and you can obviously adjust it later on. That's you've got to highlight to production what the cost is as soon as you can.
Yeah, and you can always write on a purchase order that the cost is an estimation and it can change. POs are so important. Like, you know, don't, if you're asking if you need to raise a PO for something, like, the answer is always going to be yes. They're just such a good way of tracking costs and also sharing information with a lot of people that need to see it. So like my accounts payable team who are entering all the information, it also gives them a copy of what's happening. So, you know, that so they can match things really quickly when the invoices come in. And also, you know, for coding, like, you can put your code on there so we know instantly where that goes in the budget. And when POs come through, I should be able to just see the PO and then, like Kasia says, just match it in your budget. And because it's all digital now, it's so easy to search for information on a digital platform. And then to also generate a reference number, a PO number that you can put on your budget, also means it's something that's searchable, and it says that you've actioned the cost on your budget, and it shows what process that's in, I suppose.
Quick question from Celia: should we always get an approval from the line producer or the financial controller before submitting a PO, or is that dependent on the spend?
I think that's dependent on the spend generally.
Yeah.
If it's something that's, you know, tens of thousands of pounds, then it would be good to get a little idea of that before it comes through, because don't forget that PO is then going to, if it's a large PO, it might go for studio approval, and if the studio starts asking questions about it, we all need to be across what it's for. But generally, I mean, raising a PO, you know, that is going to generate an approval for, you know, a smaller everyday cost. So I'd say for big costs, definitely flag it first, so everyone's aware that that's coming in. But for smaller things, I don't think you need to do that for everything.
Okay.
What would you say your rule of thumb for that? Like, anything over $1,000, $2,000, or less than that?
I guess it depends on the size of the show. If it's a smaller, if it's a £7 million budget, I'd say maybe over 10,000, kind of maybe give me a heads up. But if you're talking about, you know, a $90 million budget, then generally the sort of the amounts that trigger higher approvals in that instance are going to be sort of 25,000, even 50,000. So it's kind of going to be dependent on the budget. But to test, you could ask the the accountant or the financial controller at the start and just ask how they want things to be done. And I think that's also a really important thing when you start a job. It's just to iron out a process for things going forward, because everyone's going to have little different ways of doing things. And I think that's also a good case in point for a budget template, is to ask people what they want to use, because they might have a template that they want you to use, or they might be happy with yours, but can you put maybe a variance column in there? So that's just that's what pre-prep's for, I guess, is kind of getting those processes sorted out.
Matt's asked a question. Is there any case for locations budgeting using Movie Magic budgeting? I know it's an expensive system, but would production approve and encourage it?
Sorry, I'll jump in on that. I've never had a location manager using Movie Magic, and I probably wouldn't encourage that, just because the overall master budget for the show is in Movie Magic, and sort of unless you're working off the same account codes and layout of Movie Magic, which also has very different templates, it could just become a little bit confusing. And so I think Excel is probably a good way to go. And actually, when me and Tony a while ago talked about kind of best templates and how to approach them, there is a difference between how locations department builds the budget and how it looks in the main show budget, because we tend to budget things sort of per the type of spend rather than per location, whilst location managers would have the kind of summary sheet, and then they would have a tab per location. And the reason for that is that you come onto the job at the point and you start budgeting when there is a good idea of where we're going, what we're doing, which are the key locations. So you already know what kind of expenses will be involved depending on where we're going. So you'll know that some locations will require things like trackway or more security or more equipment or a separate crowd holding space. Whilst in our budget, we break it down more. We have a security account, we have crowd holding account, we've got kit account, then there's location fees separately, unit basis separately. And actually, I think it's also a bit of a challenge in how we kind of feed the costs into the main budget, because just we don't do it per location, because at the time when we build the budgets, there's most of the time no information about it. So we just don't know what these additional costs would be. So I said to Tony a while ago, I said it would be absolutely amazing if someone came up with some location software where you can switch between the two views, where you can click and see things per location, where you also have them kind of grouped in like all your unit-based costs and all your security costs, so that then I can quickly, for example, click and say, this version that Tony just submitted, let's see how much the overall cost of unit basis is, because otherwise you have to go through every single tab and see how much it adds up to. Or it's really time consuming, and I really struggle with it actually. The other way around is that I could go and take your more detailed budget and amend it all in my Movie Magic, but there's just never time for it. So I don't think in practice it would be very useful for you guys to use Movie Magic, because it doesn't give you the detail of breaking things down per location. I mean, it's possible to enter it manually, but I think a really good Excel template is the way to go. And maybe Tony here can come up with some amazing digital software that gives you both options to look at. That would be my dream.
No problem. £50,000 later. Matt's got another question. Very common now with episodic filming for TV is tight budgets and not having all the scripts in. and how do you work when you're supposed to be budgeting for an 8-episode series when you've only got 4 scripts and on a tight budget? So any advice on that, please, ladies?
Oh, you go, Nikki.
I was just going to say, I suppose you would, if you've got the first 4 scripts, you'd have to use them as a sort of basis on how the other scripts are going to go. And maybe, you know, try and get some information out of the producers as to what is going to happen in the final episodes. I mean, is it going to be more explosions or something? But if you've got the first 4 scripts, you can probably make a pretty good guess as to what the rest of it's going to be like. You know, you've got 50% of it there, so you just have to work on that, I guess. But yeah, late scripts are bad. I sort of haven't done many dramas, so tend to work more in films, but I know that scripts can be incredibly late, but you just have to work with what you have, unfortunately.
So I think, go on, Kasia, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you know, I budget. I don't. That's the same thing as Nikki. I don't really work on TV drama, but I budget those quite regularly for people, and often from one script at the time, and only. But there is always a serious outline available. The producers will always have an idea what happens throughout the rest, so they can at least tell you that, like, actually 40% of next 4 episodes will be located in London, and then we're going to go somewhere to the countryside for the rest 60% or whatever. So there is always a breakdown. And I actually did a budget recently for something that is shooting across 5 different countries, and there is just one script. So we couldn't even kind of work out what percentages of time we're going to spend in each country, but there is always like an assumption. So you go with the assumption, and then you try and work out your daily costs. Really, that's what it is. So rather than go into the detail of you know, how many days will I spend on this location, you go into the detail of, like, let's assume my daily site fee will be X, the unit-based fee will be Y, you know, I'll need this much security, and you just come up again with a formula. And obviously, because you don't have the information, you do pad it out, because otherwise you just don't give yourself any space to move things around.
So there is the important thing about this as well, Matt, is your script breakdown, because from the pages you will be able to work out how many days you will have on the locations, and at least you can then apply those pages per day and pages in location to an average spend, and reverse engineer initial producers' budgets. Get the figure from them, how much of you, we'll do this later on, but you get the whole figure of what you've been given, how many days you're likely to have in the UK, read the scripts down, see how many pages per day that is, and then you can start to work things out. So script breakdowns are quite the important area. You are right, it is crystal ball stuff, but there's methods of allaying it quite early on, where you can go back to the producer and say, look, we've got 30 days to shoot, you've got 40 locations, that's 1 location a day for 10 days and 2 locations a day for 20 days. So that has got to be an increase in fees, because you're doing double locations. So you can argue and give rough estimates, I think, very, very early on, but we can talk about that later on. I've got another one from Steve. In your experience, are the costs that are forever being under budgeted? Oh, yes. Go on. I think I'd like your opinion both, please, on this. Under budgeted costs, which ones are the most common?
Security.
Security, yeah.
Always. It's just, I don't know why, it always kind of gets blown out of the water a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess.
Also, unit moves. It's kind of not really part of your budget, but I mean, it is and it isn't. But obviously, any unit move will have an impact on transport budget, and that always goes way over. So, And I guess just filming in London is tricky as well, because you don't have many choices, and you can go with a certain assumption, and then you go to a place when there is only one unit base and someone decided to milk it, and it's like, so I guess filming in London always tends to go over in many areas. So yeah, that's
transport and unit moves is an interesting area because it doesn't sit with locations normally. That obviously you need the security at the second location to receive everything, and you need security at the first location to get rid of everything, and you need double bubble on all the gear and all of that. But enlist into that the cost of diesel, the cost of drivers, the cost of moving the kit, the time, the overtime. That's an additional cost of about 10 grand easy for every single move. So if you can limit moves, you're becoming production friendly. Rachel's
there is also often that thing of when the location manager comes in really pleased with themselves, saying they found this super cheap location somewhere and it's great and the director loves it. And then we look at the impact in other areas of the budget when we have to throw the whole unit across the whole town in about 24 hours and back again. And so I think it also requires a lot of communication and kind of thinking outside of the box and outside of only your department, and not just thinking about how will I save money in my budget, but also how will I, how will this work for other departments, art department, costume, transport, what these other departments will have to deal with if I come up with this idea. So it's not only about kind of, delivering on your budget, but being aware of the impact in other areas of production.
Rachel's got a couple of points. Rachel Blue, is it common for SLMs that SLMs are generally overrun with the general amount of work and thus not on top of their budgets? That's outrageous. And issue of delegation of overall budget to location teams. So this is probably quite true. Location managers do tend to secret away their budget and not let anybody see it. And they do get a bit overrun. Would you agree with that it's not really well kept, the budget?
Sometimes, I mean, things on a shoot, everyone's so busy all the time, right? And I suppose then keeping the budget updated just becomes a pointless admin task, some might view it as. But I suppose, yeah, I mean, once the location manager's got the budget, I mean, there's no reason why I guess they can't delegate the manual entry of the actual spend. There's no reason that can't be delegated to someone. If you've got an assistant location manager that you trust and you're happy to share the information, then it's only that's only extra work off your back if you can get them to do that admin side. I did a job where actually the location budget was on a Google document that the location coordinator had and the location manager had, and I had access to it as well. So any cost that came in, I could actually just highlight it on their Google document, and it just worked really well in terms of seeing what came in. And location managers they've never wanted to work that way again, I guess because they feel like they're showing all their cards all the time. But I thought it actually really worked. And again, I suppose it's that communication thing again, where I think you're right. I think it can be quite easy for any of us to keep something that we've been working on and that we feel like it's our baby close to our chest, but there's no reason why you can't spread the load and get your team to help you with it.
Thank you. Jackie has her hand up. Jackie, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah. So I'm very aware that obviously a lot of you guys are based down south. I don't know if it's the same kind of way. Obviously, I know that the positions are very similar. Obviously, I'm very much Scottish based. So recently, I would say over the last, year and a half or something, we're seeing a big difference in SLMs obviously dealing quite heavily with the budget and dealing with the really top line stuff. Bringing on a LM to be dealing with locations work, all that, the kind of heavy, getting it all organised. But now we're starting to see a balance of like the ALM and a location coordinator, which we've not had an awful lot of. Certainly with me, I mean, I've worked in TV and features, and more recently I've only come into contact with one location coordinator, but it seems like the location coordinator seems to be getting the job more of dealing with POs, dealing with the budgets, dealing with, you know, the kind of heavy paperwork that for the rest of us guys, we are very, very focused on. Well, certainly for me, we're taken out in the recce's and I'm placed directly on site, and it's deal with anything that happens on site. You are the person that everybody will come to. You need to have the answers for this, that, and the next thing. If there's anything that you need to deal with money-wise, speak to the location coordinator. So, but because obviously I'm Scottish-based and you guys are South-based, all over England, I don't just want to say London, I just don't know if there's a slight difference in who's dealing with what and stuff.
Yeah, there is.
In the chat.
There is, Jackie. So there is a very, it's grown in the last 4 or 5 years, location coordinators, mainly to centralise that paperwork nonsense. And I don't normally have one, but I quite like them actually. So the idea really is that it takes the paperwork trail, and particularly recording the trail, not just filling out the POs and everything, but also putting those into the budget. And it helps a great deal to take that pressure off the people on the ground. And I think it also helps in pointing upwards, answering to line producers and things like that, because as Nikki said, if that budget is constantly being updated, and I'll show you an example of that later on in the actuals, with an actuals column, and how to change between the different budgets, that is becoming useful. So that coordinator role is becoming almost every day now. So
especially on things of a certain budget level as well, where you just couldn't operate a massive film without a coordinator, and every department actually has a coordinator in it to funnel all that paperwork through and make sure, you know, that make sure all the admin side's taken care of. So I think, you know, in bigger films, but it's, I've worked on more things without a coordinator than with a coordinator, but they do make such a difference, because like you say, Jackie, when everyone's on the ground, out and about, dealing with, you know, stuff as it happens, it gets slipped to the side a little bit, but they're always worth their weight in gold.
I mean, to be honest, Jackie, I know what you're talking about. If you're on your phone trying to, with your thumbs in the pissing rain in a field, trying to put together a purchase order, whereas you can forward it to the coordinator, they can ring them, talk through the details, check everything, make the purchase order, add it to the budget. It's a much easier thing to do. I'd recommend you get them. Okay, anybody got any more questions for Nikki and Kasia? If not, we'll get on with our main bit of work. Everybody happy?
There was a question before about cash payments in locations. Don't know if you got any comment about cash payments in locations. No.
We hate them. We absolutely hate cash payments.
Illegal.
You do find yourself in a situation where you have to. Do you want to see the end of them, but inevitably they crop up in some or neighborhoods, or
you have to bring Nikki a big bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine and just sweet talk her into allowing a 20 quid payment to some location resident for his car park move. That's probably the only situation where it's allowed, when, you know, someone is being tricky and it's going to mess up your filming day. Like, you know, that's your excuse. There are no other excuses. Everything else needs to be properly recorded.
We're also cashless now. Like, you know, if you go to accounts and ask for a £20 note to pay someone, they're just gonna tell you to get out. we operate, you know, my last, I can't remember how many jobs now, we've been completely cashless. Like, we don't keep cash in the office. If there needs to be a sort of sweetener payment to someone, we would ask you to fill out a some sort of payment request form, and it will be paid into their bank account. So we've got a trail of where that money is going, and we've got all the person's information there, like their address and their phone number. And then, you know, I mean, for payments over, I don't know, £100, I guess. Again, there's going to be different shows are going to have cut-offs where they're not going to want to do like gratuity payments for over a certain amount. But you know, in the instance that it has to be done, you would raise a purchase order. You know, it's that purchase order again. Like you'd have to raise a purchase order for all these cash payments if you needed to do them, and put it through the approvals process. And that creates a paper trail for us, and it's much better than dealing with like how we used to do. We used to have to take bags of cash down to set to do various things, but those days are long gone. Like the paper POs, like, just don't happen anymore.
By going to the Palm Tree pub and telling Val that you need to pay it into a bank account, you won't film there. She's a cash lady. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, we don't have checkbooks, like we can't get cash out. I tell you what you'd have to do in that instance is, because we operate with cash cards now, so you would probably have to make a withdrawal on your cash card and do that payment on petty cash. But if you're putting it on petty cash, I would also expect a purchase order for that gratuity payment and a signed sheet behind it with her name and address on it, if that was the case.
Oh. Yeah, all about paper trail, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, and also just to make a little point, and I mentioned about POs before, and Kasia will like attest to this. Like my absolute pet peeve is a lack of information on POs. You've just got to.
I was going to say that as well. It's like it's not the case of just putting, you know, security and some total or whatever. No, just like break it down. Even if you think it's too much information, put it all in. You can write a lot in there, and the more you write, the less we're going to hassle you for more information. And it saves everyone's time in the end. And Tony, I was just going to say, because you haven't mentioned that, but are you guys talking about the importance of location contracts as well? Because that's another bit of paperwork that people often think is at the bottom of the priority list, but actually it's a delivery requirement for production. So it is important that that's done properly.
We weren't, but we have now.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody happy? Cash is always important. Yes, there's a lot of people saying cash. The easiest way to deal with cash is to actually write an invoice in their name with their details on and their address, and get them to sign it before you hand them to cash. And then it's them giving you that piece of paper, and it in effect, it is an invoice. And then you can purchase order that invoice. If they've signed it and seen it and they know you've got it, then that's the easiest way to deal with it.
The one time that I had to pay off a resident with a little bit of cash was that our accounts team said that, you know, you had to have all their contact details, but also asked for their national insurance number to be included. Does the national insurance number actually then go anywhere, or is it kind of just like a formality, but really accounts don't then actually do anything?
It's sort of, I mean, there's a form called a P, I think it's called a P11 return that you would do at the end of the year for payments that have been made to people direct like that. But to be honest, I mean, I used to do them at the BBC, but I haven't done them on a show. So that is a little bit of a formality. And I suppose it just flags up to the person that's receiving the cash that, you know, it could be reported on as income. I think with cash, I mean, just try not to offer it as an option. It just, you know, I think especially now in COVID, people are highly unlikely to think that you just have a bag of money on you. So just don't offer it as an option for payment. Just immediately go down the bank account route. And I think there'll be so few times that people will really, really push. And actually, some people, I've actually had people push for a check payment instead of a bank payment, which is even worse. Because you must have a bank account if you want a check. But yeah, people still do it. There's always like one on every job.
Yeah, but you can cash a check in a pawn shop. And
Right,
lose
is that the
10%.
reason?
Yeah. Okay, is everybody, how do the panel feel about flowers and wine as a thank you? Is that still okay?
Some studios would absolutely say no to buying anyone alcohol, and that's on all their guidelines at the start. So you wouldn't be able to. I mean, it depends on the production company or the studio, but they are not going to allow alcohol as a gift. Flowers or chocolates or whatever, that you'd probably get those through, but dependent on the production company, I think you'd have to check their guidelines at the start before you started buying things like that.
Yeah, all very boring, but necessary. Okay, and I think that's it for now, chaps. We've got to get on, and I'm aware that the ladies have also got to get on as well. I did say that they'd be half an hour. They've nearly been an hour answering our questions, which has been gold in my view.
Pleasure.
We'll just vocalise some thanks on behalf of everybody. Really great to have you. Thank you so much for sharing those tidbits.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Well, enjoy your Sunday.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Good luck.
Bye.
There we go.
There you go. Perfect.
Great. Well, so starting off with a Paul Simon quote, a little bit of 80s Paul Simon for everybody to start off. Essentially, we're all at different stages on the call, but I thought we'd take it back to basics and do a bit of a 101 guide. Like we talked about before, it's all the revolution of sharing. And so happy for anyone to drop into chat tips that they have come across along the way. So first of all, why break down the script? We're here to talk about script down in terms of how they help the budget, but it's also to think about how they help with scouting and also planning. Thanks very much. Like most people, probably, this is the first thing that I do while I'm reading the script for the first time, is I'm already kind of doing it in my head. I mean, the proper luxury to, apparently it's best to read the script through first of all, without breaking it down, just to kind of absorb it with a reading, just without doing any breakdowns, but you're automatically doing it in your head as you go through. The breakdown itself becomes an easy reference, a reference document going forward that will live next to your one-line schedule, so that you can have location specific elements to refer to. This means that the breakdown document can help feed information to the ADs or to production, and as Tony referenced earlier, can help with arguing your case with budgeting. As we'll see in the template that you've just had put in the chat there, we're going to talk through how the analysis of your breakdown, or the analysis that it highlights, will provide evidence to back up your claims of a shortage of budget. You can use it as an update table of where you're at with your scouting. You can use it as the status of finding unit bases. It can help feed into your location list. So you put your scene numbers next to the location names. The breakdown that you create might be created before the first AD is on board, and so it's a useful document to do the planning from. As with everything, it becomes about cross-referencing with the schedule or with the script to make sure you've got all the elements covered. So now we're going to talk about how, well, and why. We'll continue talking about why. Essentially, what you're doing is you're distilling the information and you're making it easy to read and go forward with it. So this is a list of the things that you are going to include in your breakdown. Fairly straightforward stuff. Scene number. We all know about scene number. Is it a day or night? What the page count is, interior or exterior. Short description of the scene so that you can easily refer to it. Whether there's any special effects or stunts. These kinds of things will be specific to your project. It may be that these elements indicate a specific location requirement or facilities requirement. Maybe there's another element that's particularly relevant to your project, like number one cast member comes with 5 starways, or there's a makeup requirement for a particular character that means XYZ location requirement. Then also helpful to have a notes column, because either this is for your ideas for potential locations that you're going to suggest, or it's for questions that you've got for either the producer or the ADs. So now we're going to look at where to find each of the elements. So what I've got here is some pages stolen from the internet of the King's Speech. So it's a script that's in the public domain, also one that possibly we've all aware of. Sadly, it's devoid of scene numbers. So what I've done some bit of highlighting. So the green arrows are where the scene headers are and where you'd ordinarily find the scene numbers. The red dotted lines, I've broken each page up into 8s. This is the standard practice, as I'm sure you're all aware. One page equates to approximately 1 minute of screen time. And to help break down in terms of how much content there is, we break a page down into 8ths. And that's what those red lines I've highlighted there. And by breaking down the page count, you can work out how long you will need at each given location by determining what the page count is for any particular scene. So on any job, more common in TV probably, that you will be given a page count per day, and that the production needs to hit. You'll need to do a certain number of pages per day in order to complete the content that you've got to shoot with. And so once you've broken down and you've seen that you've got 7 pages at a given location, you know that you're going to need to be there for 2 days, and that will feed into all the analysis that you're going to do when you're getting to the numbers side of it all. So here we have some things that I thought worth talking about on this particular script. This first thing that I'm going to look at is the fact that we've got 100,000 people here. Let's hope they're talking about VFX. But those are the sorts of things that as you read through the script, though they will flag up to you from a locations point of view. You'll see crowd and you'll think, okay, well, that means that I'm going to need to factor in loads of other facilities for that particular shooting day. So with this reference to the 100,000, that's a question, that's something to go in your notes column. How many actual people are there going to be there on that day? Next of all, the orange lines are talking about the same location, one interior and one exterior. So this will come, perhaps when you break down the script, you'll put them under the same location heading because they are in fact 145 Piccadilly. But as you well know, it may be that they end up being in 2 different places. The exterior, we've got some detail there about what they're going to be looking for, the imposing Georgian edifice, but also the fact that it's going to be road control. So which is what we've got covered here with this, what I've underlined with this green line here. So that's another factor that you're going to think about when you're breaking down the script. So then we're going to talk about how seemingly simple descriptions may mean you need to ask more questions. These are entirely fabricated script entries. Oh, I wonder if you could tell that. So interior in the bathroom, man lies dead on the floor. Very basic description, but dead body. What does this mean? Does this mean there's blood? Does that consequently mean that it's going to be a very messy scene and that have ramifications for locations or indeed include a big setup if it's a stunt in any way? Similarly, with the exterior heathland scene, what a bucolic scene I've created there, with the children children playing, may seem very straightforward, but that could also be a stunt. So just thinking about how things that seem quite simple might end up meaning you need to ask more questions. So now we're going to go to the breakdown that you have got. In fact, I think it's probably easiest if we, did you have anything to add at that point, Tony? I was going to open up that same document and on the screen for everyone to have a look at. Get the right one. Here we go.
No, we're good, but I can do a bit of explaining if you like when it comes up.
Okay, great, yeah. So we're going to start on the templates page, which is the furthest sheet to the right. And this is, the template page is the initial section that you'll start with. In each blue line, so the key thing to remember is that it's for your project, it's for your information. Eventually it will help to share with other departments like I've referenced, but essentially you need to put in the information that you need to help you budget and you get the clear information out distributed to people. So when you're breaking it down, you put in the, where it says, and in this blue line here, that's, you're going to start there and you're going to put, we looked at the King's Speech, so it'd be BBC Broadcasting House was the first one. So, spelling error. And then every single time the BBC Broadcasting House appears, you'll be putting the scene number and the scene and any other, so it might be corridor, it might be recording booth, it might be front entrance. Each time, so the first, when you first read the script, the first scene you read, that goes in the first one. You break it down as you're reading the script, and each time a location appears, you put it under its heading. Similar, and then just follow the row across. So we've got there's some overhang here from a previous project, which is from Tony's template, but we're going to change it. So we had the BBC Broadcasting House and we had the recording room. And we didn't have a scene number, but we're going to call it scene number 1. And it was the broadcaster preparing. And it was 1/8 of a page. So you'll see, as I entered the 1/8 of the page there, this brilliant formula on the header row showed up with, which is, a formula has been entered so that we can create a total for each location. Each location row has got a totaling formula to tell us how many pages will end up being at that location, which will feed in later when we get to it. Essentially, for each scene, you're creating a row and then you're putting all the details. So we don't know where it's going to be yet, but that is where you would put it in. And you could put a suggestion, or you could say, is this or not? And then we've got that it's day. And then this column here is one that you can put in when you've had your discussion with the designer about how many prep and strike days they're going to need to be at the location. Does this have a, and then here, this is where it's going to be notes. So this is another overhang from the previous usage of this template, but we're going to say that we don't have any notes. So as you go through the script, you're filling in each one. So we've got 145 Piccadilly as our next location, missing out the stadium. Put the stadium down here. This is from the King's Speech script that we just looked at. Now let's look at the top of here where we've got these totals. So where we've had this running total for each location, the summary on the row per location, these all feed in to the total number of pages. So you'll see, it's feeding in from there. That is fed by these, isn't it? Yeah. So this cell that I've got highlighted with the green box showing up here is the total number of pages for the entire script. And that means that you can make sure when you've got your total, when you've filled it all in, you can make sure that it adds up with the actual number of pages in the script itself. And what Tony's created also is a studio and location split, which will depend on your particular project, but you'll be able to create a location and studio breakdown to help you with your planning on the other tabs. Did you want to add anything, Tony?
Just a quickie. So the essential thing here is that you're getting the pages down and you're splitting the information. The important thing as well in the sets area is that you're demarcating between interior and exterior. And there's a bit of fudge in that, you know, that'll be an interior recording room, and then there could be corridor outside the recording room, which is still an interior, because what you might formulate later on is that your certain locations will be grouped together and you can get the BBC recording house, but you can't get the recording room, and that has to go to a studio. So you'll separate that out later on. The killer here is don't get uptight about the total number of pages that you actually come to. This is your interpretation of the script. So if the script reads 71 pages and you have 70 and 4/8, don't bust yourself up about that. Don't go through it trying to get it down to the exact date of a page. We're using this as percentages at the moment. So we're using this to prove our theory about how many locations we've got and what percentage of the script is on location and what percentage is on studios. So don't worry that it's exactly 71 pages. That's it for me.
Matt, a question from Matt about the shoot strike column. The shoot strike column is for when you speak to the designer about how long they think they're going to need at each location. In fact, we thought that actually should probably be called
prep shoot strike,
because you're then starting to build the plan for how you might approach each location and talk about how much it's going to cost you, because you know how many days you're going to need to be there in total. There's another question in the chat. Let me just check that one out. Okay, so we're not talking about page numbers actually, Rachel, it's page count. The page number doesn't matter, the scene number matters and the page count matters, but absolutely the script rewrites will impact probably page count too. Yeah, so that's one of the things Kasia was referring to, making sure you're updating stuff, keeping on top of the admin side of it, as boring and as laborious as it is, it's essential, because it's what keeps the whole thing flowing. If you haven't updated the fact that you've had a rewrite, then it's not fit for purpose, because you haven't included all the new additions. So after you've got this template tab going with where you've filled in the whole script and you've put in all your details, so maybe you think BBC Broadcasting House, you've got this brilliant idea of where you're going to put it. You filled in all your notes and gone through the script. What happens now is you can use it to help with your budgeting by going to the highlights tab. Go to the highlights tab over here. Yep, there we are. And what we've got now is is we've broken it down to facts and figures to support any budgeting discussions you're going to be having. Would you agree that 4 pages a day is a reasonable average? So this number for pages per day has come from a producer. So that figure set up there, you'll get that from the producer. That's the idea, that you are working with the information that you're being given by the team. And you're using that then to reconcile all of your estimations, which are kind of based in fact, you know how much the location is going to cost you per day. Yeah, as Tony said, it's the producer who provides that information. So we have got you're breaking down a breakdown again now. So this page is so we're talking about an episodic series now, and each block is 2 episodes. So in this first column, this is all the headers. The next cell down is telling us that we're on episode 1, season 2, episode 1, and the page count is taken from the episode 1 tab. Similarly, yeah, you can correspond to a page, or if you know what if it's a film, you might want to break it down by location and each have a summary for each page count for each location. But if we just talk about the episodic version here, you've broken down the number of pages. You've got your split from location and studio and CGI. Fortunately, no CGI here. So from this, your location days per script is you've worked that out by dividing the total number by your pages per day up here, and you've created this estimate of how much it's going to shoot you how much it's going to cost to shoot per day, and then so you can average out how much it's going to cost by timesing your number of location script days, this one, by your estimated shoot per day. And that's essentially what's happening all across each row of this document, until you get down to the bottom where you can Tony, do you want to chime in with talking about these figures here, because this is your genius bit at the bottom here.
Okay, so if you just go back up to the top a second, Amy.
Yeah.
So when you're breaking a script down, this is essentially your first budget. Most of the information that you receive from the producer will give you a chance to be able to show them whether their budget is good, bad, or indifferent. And you need to highlight really, really early on in the process whether they are short, because they won't think of it in the way that you're thinking about it. So if this was a film, episode 201 would be our script of 71 pages. We know, so we would get from the producer, as Kasia said, how much have you got in for all the boxes on your budget for locations, whatever it is, however they split it up, the thing that you will all add together for the money that you can spend on locations, and then divide that by the number of shoot days that they think they need, so that you're working on a cost per day. That's pretty simple. Obviously your crewing isn't in here, but every other cost is, and then you know what you've got to spend per day. You can then look at the scripts, and if a producer says to you, oh, it's 50-50 studio locations, you can quite quickly see that it isn't. It's actually a bit askew, and you have the ability of adjusting that really quite quickly. If they say that they've based their schedule, they will have done a schedule if they're basing that on 4 pages a day. So if you just adjust 4 pages to 3 pages, please, Amy. That's the difference in the figures. There's quite a big jump because you're taking 25% longer. So just adjust that back to 4 and go down to the bottom, please.
Just to say also, this column actually here, H, should be per episode, shouldn't it, rather than per shoot day?
Yes, it should be. Yeah, per ep. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, yeah, we'd all love 122k a day.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So if you're looking at the bottom section there, this is an important part to just stick it up a bit so everybody can see it. This is quite an important part. You're working out what the producer has given you in a cost per episode or cost per film or cost per location or whatever you want to do, and you'll be able to get the producer's budget total with what they've given you. You can now see that if you break it down on this system, you've immediately got a difference, okay? And the difference is quite considerable. So you've got to communicate that difference really early on. And the things that normally change it are if you've got 30 days of filming and you've got 40 days of locations, or you've got 40 locations. So that means you're doing 10 locations in 10 days and you're doing 20 locations in maybe 10 days. So you're doing 2 location days. So every time you've got more than one location, that adds to your bill. And that is something that you need to communicate to your producer really, really early on. So working out the differences in just by using pages and the information that you're given by the producer sets you off in an area where you can say, I'm sorry, matey, you're 80 quid, 80,000, 100,000 down. If you corrected that page difference there, Emmy, at the top, I can't see that right now. Is that still on 4? Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So that gives you the differences, and that's the important area. Okay. There we go. Anything else?
Great, fantastic. So this is a template for you to play around with. Hopefully you've all managed to download it from the chat. But to have a look through how it's been used to break down each episode. So you've gone from the full script to breaking it down per episode. Now this is with information from an existing production, but it kind of gives you an idea. It shows you how it's been split between studio and locations work. And this will then help feed in when you're scouting, because in this notes column, you've either got somewhere where you think it's going to be, or you've got a space. And under Hastings House here, we've got the H&D bedroom and we've got the front drive, which are both Hastings House in the script reference. But we know we're going to do the front drive at this Wilton place, but we don't know where the H&D bedroom is going to be yet. And so that when you're reporting how you're getting on with your scouting, maybe you're going into a meeting, or maybe you're talking through with your scouts, just in team meetings, you can see where the gaps are, or you can see, or maybe you've got an idea. I think the green bedroom in Wilton is going to work perfectly for the H&D bedroom. So you're kind of using it as a working document where you're putting in. You might have middle of the night, it comes to you, the green bedroom would be a great idea. You're keeping a kind of note taking. You can use it for note taking, or you can use it for actuals, and you can probably set your own. So look, you've got a orange, yellow color code to clearly highlight the ones that need to be found. So you're straight away, you look at that, you can scroll down, and if you're sharing it with the revolution of sharing, you can scroll, then other people can scroll down and see, okay, so these are the ones that we still need to find, and you can kind of totally keep track of where you're at with everything. So you've gone through, so we've looked at episode 1, then there's all the other episodes along the bottom there. And because it's episodic, there's going to be, you're doing 2 episodes in a block on this particular one. And this one's been broken this time in this tab, we've broken down the block by location, which is another way of doing it. So you're basically using the information that you've got from your original breakdown to create various forms of the information so that you can look at it from all angles to help with different ways of planning. So you've gone straight to the Ranger's House location, and you can see what you're doing there. Although you can also see that you're only there for 1/8 of a page, and so it may be that might not happen after all. Similarly, you could break it down by your unit-based options. So you've got block 1, you've got your location column here, and then possible ideas of where you might end up unit basing. And similarly, you can create yourself an availability tab, which is also along there. There's a question. Hope that answers your question, Matt. So does anyone have any questions? No. My parting words for breakdowns would be that as you do them more, you'll get into it more. But essentially, there's no right or wrong way of doing it, and it's about the information that you're going to need to take you forward to the next stage of entering it into the budget. So just put it's kind of like sorting out all of the, or like getting rid of the excess stuff, all of the descriptive wording, and just really pulling out the detail that a location is location specific. Tony, I'm going to hand back to Tony, and he is going to talk about budget, but he's muted.
So just so you just keep that as a breakdown. You can use it for films, obviously delete the other episodes and just drop it into the template, and then you're creating new pages and dragging and dropping it and doing whatever. It's not, I haven't set it up so that it transfers information from one to the other, but it's a really easy thing to do formula wise. The essential part of it is that is in essence your original budget. That's how the budget all starts. That's the reason why the breakdown is very, very important. Just a little caveat. Excel, I think, is the only software that can deal in eighths. It doesn't, I know Google, I'm working on a Netflix, obviously, Bridgerton. I'm working on that right now. They use Prodigal, which is their in-house Google Drive. And we've put a request up to Google at the moment to actually have the possibility of working in eighths. They do not work as a fraction into eighths. So if you're putting a script breakdown into Google, it will come up with a really weird figure in there. It just can't do eighths. It's just weird. It would probably work in quarters, but you're less likely to get an accurate sort of area there. Let me just shoot that. Right, sorry. Do you have a location fee tab that feeds into the budget? How do you mean, Rachel? Could you just give me a bit more information? How do you mean? Can Rachel talk?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi. What I meant was, if you've got like it's almost like a library factor where obviously location fee per day shoots at, what the Crown Estate charges per day to shoot in the park or at Sion, it's just like, would your budgets accommodate or feeding into your budget if you had like almost like a library of your own standard location fees? Obviously you'd have to keep it up to date, but does that help with your budgeting? Or
yeah, it does
at this stage, or?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I go over old budgets and sort of pick out the key figures. Film London do actually, they may still release a bit of information. They do, particularly for things like parking. They give you a set of what every borough does on the costs. That covers traffic management, parking costs, road closures, things like that. So you can gain a lot of information from Film London about that. Generally, you've got to ring up and do your homework. That's the kicker, and that we'll get into that next. But the other area of that is coming into asking your mates. It's ring round stuff, and I know that the Great have been into Hatfield House recently, so I'll give one of their guys a ring and say, what were the costs? Build it like that. The only other way to do it is to actually ask for the standard costs of everywhere, and you'll just get used to doing it.
That's fine. Thank you.
Matt, what are you saying? That it works as a percentage, 1/8, or can you build a page like that in numbers? Does it actually work in fractions though? It works in fractions. Okay, so numbers works. It's the Google Sheets that has the problem. So if you're doing script breakdowns in Google Sheets, it may cause you issues. You're down to 0.125 of a page, I suppose. That's interesting. Good luck with that. Okay, so
being able to see the information as you read it to correspond with how the schedule presents it, isn't it? Because obviously 1.125 is an eighth, but seeing 1/8, it's just about kind of having the getting the symbols to match in your mind, so you know that you're talking about 1/8.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's have a look at a budget template. So I'll put that on there. I'm just going to deliver everybody the budget template. So, right, this is a monster. If everybody just downloads that and opens it, and we can share a screen, and I can show you what this looks like. Is that it? Boom, there you go. Right, can everybody see that quite clearly? Does that need to be bigger? Let me do it that way. Okay. So simple things, a little bit of housekeeping. Which budget are you talking about, and what date it's been put in? And this is when you've made it. There'll be version 2, version 3, version 4. It'll change from a different schedule, or it'll change from a different script, or there'll be a script revision, and you need to just keep up to date that if you do decide to change anything, that you update your headers and footers. Quite important.
There's just been a note here from Angus. Error. You've sent us a screenshot of an error notice. Angus, is that when you're trying to open the document?
Yeah, it just pops up when I open the document. Didn't affect actually opening it. It was just a warning, so I didn't know.
Yeah, it's got formulas in it, so it'll be a worry to your Excel. Shouldn't cause any issues. I'm not spying on you.
Everyone else okay? Yeah, great. We've gone a bit blurry on the screen. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that. No, okay, just me. Great.
It might be because I'm recording as well, so this is a bit slow. So there's your sort of overview of the locations. Pretty simple. What the script location is, what the actual location is, and then I've split, but each budget template page is in location cost, miscellaneous, parking, and security. I've then got the number of shoot days that we're planning in, and this gives a producer an immediate sight on how much per day this location is going to cost. We then get our total, which is our original total, and then we have our actuals once we get into actually looking after an actual budget that's got working costs in it. And that's a bit unneat, so I will neaten it. There we go. Things I do here. So on the bottom, you can see all the different sheets which make up each individual location. This is for a block of high-end TV at the minute. So this is only covering 2 scripts and not a lot of locations. If you're on a film and you're jumping around quite a lot, you could have 20 or 30 different tabs, which can be quite hard to navigate because they drop off the end here and they can't fit on. So I use a little bit of basic hyperlink management. So the numbers here are hyperlinked. So if you click on that, it goes straight into the actual page that's the budget page for that location. And then there's a link back to header to just get you back to the main thing. So you can manage like that instead of trying to go left and right on these when you've got 30 odd pages. So that gives us an idea of where we are. Now, the easiest way to do this when you start off is to just build as per the template. So here's an empty page. This gives you enough of a crib sheet to add in any of the costs that you feel that you need. Okay, some of it is automated, and I'll go through that in a second. And some of it works on the globals page here, which gives us just a standard reply based on our globals. And just to sort of talk you through it, this area up here is the total costs that reflects back onto the header sheet. This is where you'd add your costs in. So a pre-prep day of 1,000, a prep day of 1,000, a shoot day of 2. No, Siri, keep quiet. Hold days of, let's say, 750, and strike days of 1,000. So as you can see, that populates down here. If it also depend on what we need to do, if we go 2 days here, it populates. And if we need 2 strike days, it populates all of that. What it also does is populate your security costs straight away, and some of your parking as well straight away. Now that is all linked to your globals, and I'll explain that in a second. And then it's really going down, looking at the cribs and going, okay, are these guys going to charge me for electricity? Yes, I'm going to put 250 in that as a budget. Comes up on the spend. The balance column, you'll note, hasn't changed yet. And we go down and add where we need. And some of this is pretty knowledge-based. So how much does it cost for a copper to turn up for the day in London? Well, he turns up on an hourly rate and it's about 65 quid, but then his bike is charged at a daily rate of about 40 quid, I believe, if I remember rightly. So those sort of factors need to get sort of put in there. You might not need them for a full day. Bang a full day in on your first budget. Aim high. Just to you're dealing with so much uncertainty here that always aim high initially. You can trim it back down and it shows that you're being very diligent later on with your line producer, but there is no point in putting police assistant in at 6 hours when you know you're going to get hit possibly later where the ADs want it closed down much earlier on. So always go up, always think worst case. So worst case, for example, would be traffic management. If they're coming and doing a stop go board, it's going to cost you £1,000, 1,500 quid. Bang 2 grand in all the time. Anything that's got anything by the road, always think worst case. Okay. Location surveys are things like having engineers look at the structure of the flat roof that you're going to put a camera on to make sure that the DOP doesn't fall through. Trackways at base and location, you can see it's quite simple. It just is little crib sheets. And then I always have a little bit of miscellaneous. So you can add in little areas that you feel that you need, but then also put a little note in here. There's a good, well, there's 8 there. So that's more than enough. Now, parking and security, just for ease, I deal with a globals page. The reason is, if we go back to the header, what a producer will look for is quite quickly, they'll pick out, if they want to try and reduce the budget, they'll pick out the big costs. There's one there, £65,000 a day to shoot in this interior Buckingham House ballroom. Well, if they've only got 50 a day and we're shooting 3 days, they're going to look at saving 45 grand. So they may ask you to scout somewhere else, or they may ask you to budget an alternative that possibly isn't as good. And the template comes back in quite nicely there, because you can add a template, rebudget this whole page for a slightly less useful location, and then use the two to compare. And it's very simple. It provides you with a whole set of costs. So you can then stick those in, factor those out, whatever you need to do. Globals is the key. So globals makes your life a lot easier. First of all, security. How much you're going to pay them? What hours per shift you want to do? 13 hours is a sneaky one. Really, the blokes work 12-hour shifts. If you put 13 in, you always get an overlap. Always quite useful to have an overlap of security when the crew are coming in or when the crew are leaving. You can normally, if you're doing normal days, time that quite nicely. It's when you're doing nights and people are turning up at 4, it probably goes a bit messy. That gives you a shift total, and then you need to add meal allowances for the evenings. So then I've just put in a set of numbers here, look. So pre-prep, we'd have one guy on during the day. Prep, we'd have one during the day and night, and so on. You feed in these figures. Obviously, they're going to go up and down for the big days, but these are the averages. So this will give you a set amount per location based on what you put in that top there in your shoot and strike days. So if you change these days round, that will automatically change on your crew, on your security crew. The other area that's a real bonus are the parking. How do you deal with your parking per day? This is where you can hide quite a lot of cash. So those figures at those figures at the top there are for Westminster. So that's heavy money in comparison to, say, going out somewhere like, I wouldn't say Ealing, they'll probably sting you for more money. Somewhere like Hillingdon, which would be cheaper. But if you've got all of these figures in, that's worst case, you can plan ahead. These, again, you can add and take off on these vehicles, and this is obviously based on an 18-tonner. You know, the grip might turn up in a Luton, which is not as big, and you can come down on the sizes. So this gives you your tech trucks, you can add and take away, your prep trucks, your strike trucks, and your crewing and your crew parking. And again, that's based on a central London day. Add and take away what you need. But what it does do is it doesn't mean that you have to be guessing on each of those location tabs. Okay, pretty straightforward. General location costs. I honestly use my past shoots to look at this, because I work on a spend of what I'm averaging within sort of the miscellaneous costs. So I don't do too much detail on this. I find it pretty pointless, to be honest. So the producer will normally argue this. What do you mean you're spending £3,000 a day on consumables? And then you can give them a much more accurate list. But this is just an element that allows you to go into a bit of detail, but doesn't forget an essential part, which can spend a lot of money. And then the last one, which is always useful for producers, is crewing. So we use a big old spreadsheet for that. Obviously, you start on whatever day you're going to start on, who it is, what their figures are. Really straightforward. Gaps can, we don't give the coordinator a car, for example. And that is on 5 days a week, all the way through, with your preps and your breaks and your wrap periods and anything. And it gives you a total. Really simple. If you're adding marshals, again, you just add them in on the dates. So when is Ollie doing his work there? He's done 2 days and 5 days. And you can just keep a running total all the way down. So you know exactly where your crewing is at all times. Easy to change, easy to deal with. Doesn't deal in overtime, deals in days. But over time, this gives you at least an accurate area of where you think the costs are going for the producer. Okay. And that really covers the whole area of budgets. The important thing here, oh, I should do actuals.
Well,
So
also say padding. You know.
Oh yeah, everybody wants to know about lying. Okay. So
Well.
Here we go. Let's talk about padding. Where do you lose your money? Using the globals allows you a big lump of padding because you're always giving worst case scenarios. The other argument that you can deal with normally is extras and how they get worked. And for us, crowd facilities. So crowd facilities on location, you might be able to do that. You might not be. You might be taking cafes over, restaurants over, community halls over, that sort of thing. But then what it also does give us is an area for marquees, honey wagons, various other things. So you can always add in in the crowd areas. That's always a healthy area. Always add in for other fees like traffic management. Traffic management is quite an important element nowadays. People get very, very worried about it. Usually 10 years ago, we were just sticking brand new runners in the middle of the road and telling them to stop the motorway. Now it's all really quite serious because they get killed and you don't want that. So
obviously it's more serious now.
yeah, and rightly so. So the areas you can normally hide things in. Trackway is always a classic. You always need, if the weather's shit, you always need more trackway. If the weather's great, it's a great way of saving money. The line normally is where you don't want to get anything stuck, do you? Because if you get anything bogged in, that screws the day. So we have to put the trackway down. And then you put the lighter stuff down, and that's damn sight cheaper than the heavy stuff. And it's damn sight quicker to get down and get up. So you can fiddle about with that area. This quite quickly makes things up. So if every one of your locations has got 100 quid in for cleaning, which doesn't seem to, we used to clean it ourselves and get it all shipshape, but now people want some money. Normally they'll let you walk away, so you can save money there. Gratuities and residents are normally the other areas. I've gone into the city and had to send 25 residents of a block out to a hotel for a weekend, and that was a shocking amount of money. So within the crib points, I'd say generally hide them in your globals, your parking, and your extras and SA areas and setups. You've got to bear in mind that if you're in the West End and you need one of the conference facilities in a hotel to put in 100 extras, you then probably need 5 rooms for the principal actors because they all want a room in there as a green room. It just snowballs out of control. And you can't find those facilities in the West End cheaply. They will normally be more expensive than the actual location. So you can normally fudge them away in making people comfortable. That's quite a simple thing. So what we've done now is we've got our original first budget, and that is our script breakdown and how we show the producer where they're going wrong or how well they've prepared their budget. Normally, in my view, you're making them aware that they haven't got enough money set aside for this. That normally comes from having to do more than one location in a day. As soon as you hit a second location in that day and you've got unit moves, you're adding 25% to your daily cost quite easily. So that's the first element. Second element, you're doing your budgets. That's what we've just gone over now. So you've got your beautiful budget with your headers. If you've got your prep and strike days in here and you've done it with your designer, you can present that to the producer. All of a sudden it goes massively up because the designer wants 5 days to put the flowers in. You can then give it to the producer and go, well, there you go. Fiddle with the prep and strike days and have an argument with the designer. And it gives them the latitude to play with your budget and come up with a plan, or look at a location like the interior Buckingham House Ball and go, that's too expensive, we're not doing that. They can combine locations, they can choose lower end locations, they can do all those things. But this type of budget gives them the opportunity to see straight away where those issues are. Here's the kicker on this. So when you've got a budget, you've gone through your 18 versions and you get to an actuals budget where you're going to spend money. You then flip into actually recording your purchase orders and your spend. Really simple. So if we go on to sheet 1, so this spend column, here's a good one, is currently a 0 balance difference because the spend is exactly the same as the allowance. So if we put in purchase order 234 and that came to £25,000, we've automatically saved £2,000. So that balance figure comes up here. It's also reflected in the actual cost versus the original cost. And it's also now reflected up here. So this has changed, these two. And then it's just a simple thing of going through this very quickly and either going, oh, look, that's a green because that's gone down. But unfortunately, let's say that has gone up. Purchase order 235 is £2,500. We weren't expecting that, so that's a positive on our balance. And that has increased this location. So I just to make it easy for them, I'd put that in red. And there you're immediately looking at the whole of the budget very, very quickly. As Kasia says, she really likes colours. And there's a difference here. And that difference is currently a little bit more. So that difference needs to be a red. So that gives you a really quick overall budget. The important thing to do is make sure that you don't save this back where it was, that you save it as a new file, an updated file, because you'll be going over and over your work. And believe me, you get snowblind with all these figures. So having this in some form of order that when it's 10 o'clock at night, you're trying to put figures in, it's as easy to do as this.
Really great stuff. Can I ask you a couple of questions that have come in the chat, Tony?
Shoot.
First one is, how does the globals tab feed into each location tab?
Special source formula. So here you go. Let's have a look. So the special source, here we go. It's just literally a formula. So what's that formula? So this is globals H31 times the pre-prep days. So if I was to put pre-prep day in on this location, there's the pre-prep days at 2K. So I've added a pre-prep day. This has now gone up because we've had one man on 1 day of figures. And what we look at doing is that's our figure. What we get in the globals is we know that we've got one man on pre-prep at these costs. Okay, if we go back to our sheet, all these costs are reflected from the globals numbers that you've put in. So you know it's 195 a shift, you know that certain people are getting that figure. So on there's your formula, and the 195 and the £10 have come from the globals page. So that formula's constant. If you were to add a night guy in, that's what happens. So what you can do is, sorry, screw that up. 0. What you can do is change this. So when you're into your detail, the globals gives you a first hit, okay? And that lets you work on it. If you've got a big day, oh, we're going to need 25 guys on location for the day, then you just change that. Now you've edited this page, so it won't be the same. But what the globals does is give you that first hit of at least predicting where your security costs are. You just got to be careful once you've actually started to edit this area that the globals don't work in here. That's why this isn't, yeah, okay. I know I've got data in there, I can see it. But the prices are the key. So if your producer says we don't want to pay £15, we only want to pay £14, you correct that. And your prices have come down straight away. Really simple. Any others, Amy?
Yeah, there's another question. When copying the template tab to add a location page, do you have a quick process for reconnecting the formulas from the new sheet to the header sheet?
Yeah. Okay, so this is what I'd do. Let's say we're going to make an 11. So we're going to add in here. So I'd go insert a column. I'd then come down here. I'd take all of this column. Now, this is a bit of a cheat, but oh God almighty, help me. Look, the best way to do it is copy that column and put it in there. I'm on the, we're recording, so it's quite slow. Now this will be wrong now, but if you go into the template page, you've made out your template. Come on, click on your template page. Everything's very slow, hold on. And then move and copy. Hold on, can't see that. So I'm going to create a copy and I'm going to put it before sheet general costs. Boom. I'm then going to change that to sheet 11. And then we go back to header, which we can do on our navigation. Go down here, change this to 11. What we might need to do on this is change the hyperlink. So you go Command K. This gives you the hyperlink of that area. Find the sheet that you want it to do. There it is on 11. Change that to 11. Interior racetrack. If you look up, this one isn't actually. So that is actually a just text. But if you wanted to copy that from the page, you just go =, down to page 11, go in to this section here, which is where your scene script is. Click on that, press return. That's added it in. And then these ones, again, this is your actual place. So go equals sign down to 11 and add that in, because that's the name of the place. And then these, all you need to do is go along the formulas and change the sheet 10 to sheet 11. So if we quickly do that, because all the, I done that right? Yep. All the calculations are all based in the same cell. So you can just flip those over to 11s. And it will change everything. That's just a normal calculation, and that is a sheet, so that needs changing. Okay, so 34,886. Check 11. 34,886. So it's all got the boxes. These are the boxes it takes the information from. So those are all fine. And if we change something, let's put car removal of 10K in there. So that's now an extra cost, and that should be reflected in number 11 where it's gone up. Yeah. And if we go back to 11 and actually put that as 5,000 in the actuals, it should reflect a £5,000 change on the header. And there it has done. There you go. Happy?
Fantastic. Yeah, really great. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? Or would anyone else like to share any of their tips?
Can I ask where you've labelled your tabs as sheets? Have you done that so that then when you're editing the top sheet with a new location, it's a quicker process instead of naming them the location?
Yes.
You can alter it so much more quickly by doing it that way.
Yeah, you can add. So here's another thing, for example, Hannah, let's say we're going to do specifically in episodic stuff, or if you need to revisit a location. So here's sheet 2. We're going to go to sheet 2. We're going to go to number 2 again, okay, because we have to visit it later on. So I would just copy that, create a copy, put it before sheet 3. Let it do its thing. Come on. Well, you can see here, look, I've got, there we go. Has it done it? It's struggling. So here's sheet 3, and I've just made a sheet 3A. It's the same location, but it's a different set of dates. So if we keep it like that, it's much quicker to edit it on, and we know that we're going to the same place. It's just a different set of dates, or a different set of scenes, I think. So there you go. Look, 201.58 and 202.6 and 202.24. So yeah, that is the reason.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Matt says, can you say it all again?
Yeah. Listen, if honestly, because the whole point of Circles and the app and the platform is to help people get more work, but also to help people be more apparent to the production companies when they're trying to find dailies or extra people. That it's a two-sided platform, Circles. The app's going to be free for the crew forever, and the production companies will pay for the management platform that we've developed. With that, those fees will get churned into this type of training, because I feel what we're missing is a sort of this is a typical example. There's a lot of broad cross-section of people here all wanting to know about this stuff because it will help them. And I think what we're trying to do with Circles is to give them as much advice as possible, but also be there for people if they have any issues. Honestly, if you're using this and you're struggling, just give me a bell and I can help. Okay. The whole idea of this is to help people get on in their career. So by all means, just get hold of me and we can talk it through.
There's a really great question here from Hannah Sapira. She says it's a rookie question, but I think it's a very valid question. At what point are you expected to be able to break down a script and create a budget like this on your own? I know as a location assistant, you are still quite far away, but is it expected from an experienced ALM, or is it more of an LM/SLM role?
It's a head of department role. And we're doing this before any of you lot turn up. So this is really early on. What I would say is the important area is getting used to these pages for coordinators. I mean, I would just let the coordinator run with the actuals budget and just let them put the PO numbers in and the actual spends in. I'd let the ALMs do that as well. I'd let the ALMs see that individual page and let them deal with that. So I think somebody was actually saying that they've ran their own location budget for each individual location. That's when you need to be getting around this, because if you change a formula and you've put all sorts of stuff in and you change a formula, you don't know what you've done, and you think, oh, I'll have to go back to the original document now because I've really screwed this up and start all over again, that you do need to be aware. You know, as in the example early on from Kasia, that if you're doing it like a Word document, there's really no point in doing it. This is designed to help you save a lot of time. So yeah, you do need to know it, but really script breakdowns as an HOD.
Yeah, so it's about having an awareness, isn't it, from early on, just kind of thinking, starting to think about the bigger picture as you get more responsibility and go up through the department.
I mean, to be honest, if I'm really struggling and with time, and we've got a new script come in, there's no reason why I won't give that to an ALM and go break that down. I'll be back tonight and we'll have a look at it. And, you know, I break the script down with the designer last week. We just sat in his office and banged it all out into exactly that breakdown and sent that out to everybody on Bridgeton within about an hour. And then that's the document that's used. It's used by our department. It's used by every department. You send it to the ADs, they were using it, and they rely on that to help structure their schedule very early on. Okay, any more questions? I'm a bit bored of talking now.
You've got a job offer. Matt would like you to be his coordinator.
Yes, that's not a problem, Matt. I'm very expensive though.
Yeah, good point. Angus says, where do you usually place unit holds over weekends if you don't have a studio?
Okay, so Angus, you're staying in the location? Is that what you're saying?
I think it sounds like it's hold. Oh, sorry, go on.
It's basically wondering where you'd store that cost if you're not, well, if you can't stay in a location over the weekend and keep your unit base or unit vehicles there, just for the sort of ad hoc, if you need to find a car park or something for them. I'm on a job where we don't have any sort of production base really, apart from a small office, so there's nowhere to put anything over the weekends.
Wow, how does that work? What? Okay, so what I would probably
that's another conversation.
Yeah, you've either got two choices. You either stick it in here under your top end part of your budget as a couple of hold days and just put it in as a fee. And I'd say you do, okay, it's 2 days at £1,000 for the car park. And then I would just say that's weekend holding parking for that location. What you've got to obviously be really conscious of is if that location doesn't fall on the Friday anymore and it gets shifted, that's actually a couple of grand that you've got spare, I suppose. So you've got to constantly be moving that around suitable for your at a glance schedule, so that you can see where everything's going. Or at the other end is add it in amongst your parking and stick it in here as a MISC parking cost, and just put, you know, weekend parking in there, and just put that as 2 days at a grand. And oh, that's rubbish. And do it in like that. For some reason that doesn't have a figure in there. There you go. And add it in there. But again, you've got to monitor that. So as soon as you change a location, it's not falling on just before the weekend. You've got to adjust all those.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, I think we're done, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so.
Fun.
I think we are. So I guess just to say thanks to everyone for joining us this Sunday morning. Thanks to Tony for the fab templates that he sent out. And looks kind of sunny out there. So enjoy the day, everyone.
Can I just add, chaps, that what we're going to do is we're going to send round a little missive to everybody just to gauge response and see if it's worth doing these sort of things regularly. They will be for free. We are never going to charge the crew for these sort of things. We'll get productions to pay for it. And if it is something that you've enjoyed, what other elements would you like to look at? Would you like to look at contracts? Would you like to look at how you do location applications with Film Fixer, that sort of thing? It doesn't have to be location centered. It can be agnostic, but I'd love to hear what else worries you and where you think you need more experience.
Yeah, great stuff.
Stop sharing. There we go. Right. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you again.
Thanks, Tony.
Cheers. Bye.
Very good.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.